journey begins on the privately owned 8,000-ton roll-on, roll-off ferry, the Herald of Free Enterprise, part of a booming industry carrying 15 million people a year to and from Europe. She's owned by Townsend Torreson, which in early 1987 is bought by rival shipping company P&O for £400 million.
I've been studying this company closely, and frankly, gentlemen, it's in pretty poor shape. Therefore, I'm proposing some radical changes with immediate effect.
New chairman Peter Ford is in the job for only 9 days before the disaster.
I'm restructuring senior management. I'm afraid this will mean losing most of you. I've asked my PA to arrange individual meetings with you all over the next few days.
The Herald makes 4 crossings a day, and her crew is under pressure to leave Zeebrugge on time. Chief Officer Leslie Sable takes control of loading the last 20 cars. It's his job to make sure the bow doors are closed. Herald is due to sail in 15 minutes' time.
Captain, officers and crew would like to welcome you on board the Herald of Free Enterprise.
Stand by fore and aft.
Aye, aye. Standing by forward. Standing by aft.
Assistant bosun Mark Stanley took a break after the Herald docked in Zeebrugge. He should be back on duty now, closing the bow doors, but he's still asleep. Chief Officer Leslie Sable is responsible for seeing the doors are closed, but he's in a hurry to get to the bridge and leaves the vehicle deck while they're still open. His failure is compounded by the master, Captain David Lurie, who should ask his chief officer if the doors are secured. He doesn't. Captain Lurie set sail at 6:05 UK time, 5 minutes behind schedule. The Herald of Free Enterprise is carrying 460 passengers, 80 crew, 81 cars and 47 lorries.
As the boat pulls from the harbour, you'd sometimes feel bumps, as she probably hit the harbour wall a little bit and 1 or 2 buffers. You would hear the engines or turbines or whatever they call them start to build up speed, and you would get a general feeling of the movement of the boat.
As the Herald heads for open water, she accelerates to a speed of 18 knots. But the bow doors are still open. The ferry's momentum creates a bow wave which forces hundreds of tons of seawater into the vehicle deck.
Tend to get the feel of the ship, you know how she operates, how she's moving, what's certain. You can even tell which direction the waves are coming from when you've been on a ship a long time. And it just got to a point where the ship was sort of listing over, and it wasn't right, it didn't feel right.
These are now the last moments of the Herald. The floodwater on the vehicle deck makes her so unstable, she lists 30 degrees to port. Seconds later, she appears to right herself before listing to port again. This time, she doesn't come back. The Herald capsizes in less than a minute. It's 6:28. The ferry is thrown into darkness as water short-circuits first her main and then emergency lighting systems. Families who'd been sitting together in the cafeteria are swept apart by the force of water.
Chris, where are you?
Inside the Herald, 540 people are trapped. Outside, an international rescue operation is racing to save the survivors from the cold water of the North Sea.
Yes, I'm watching it now. How the hell did it happen?
It hit the harbour wall turned onto its side.
Okay. I'm booked on a flight from Manchester, but I won't get there till tomorrow morning. I'll call you as soon as I land. Goodbye.
Disaster and the possible loss of life. And of course then I realised what a horrendous situation had arisen and what a, that we were going to have to try and deal with.
News is spreading of a major disaster. Emergency numbers are being inundated. Families are struggling to find out what's happened to their loved ones.
Up to 400 people are believed to be trapped below decks of a British North Sea car ferry.
It's my fault. I left the doors open.
Everyone wants to know if there's anything more that can be done. Anything that is required will, of course, be done. We're just racking our brains and our minds to see if there's anything else.
And this wasn't an old ship, and they thought that they had all the latest safety devices. And I don't think anyone quite thought of this kind of speed, or perhaps this particular kind of accident.
After the shock comes anger. The nation wants to know how a ferry could have set sail with the doors open. It becomes a political issue. The suspicion is that Townsend Torreson put profit before people's safety. It falls to the new chairman, Peter Ford, to begin providing some answers.
The latest information I have is that divers are still searching the Herald and more bodies are being recovered. However, it's unlikely that all of the casualties will be found until the ferry is salvaged.
How long will that take?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that question. It is likely to be weeks rather than days.
Weeks?
My wife and son are still on there. You're telling me they've got to stay in that bloody water?
Yeah, my family's on there. I am assured that the salvage operation will take place just as quickly as possible.
You bastards! It's because the doors were left open. What the hell was the captain doing?
That is something we're investigating as a matter of urgency.
Investigations confirmed that before leaving, the captain hadn't checked the bow doors, and the crucial safety equipment had not been installed.
I was flabbergasted. I just couldn't understand how it could be possible that a huge ship of that design, with dozens of indicator lights showing you all sorts of things, did not have a large indicator light to tell you that the bow doors were open. And this is, to my mind, like having a 747 without a light to tell you the undercarriage isn't down, because it has equally catastrophic consequences.
It was revealed that 2 years before the disaster, senior officers asked for bridge indicator lights after several Townsend Torreson ferries had set sail with their doors open. But the request was dismissed by company managers, who considered them unnecessary and expensive. Had they been installed in 1985, the disaster may never have happened. Half the Herald's 80-strong crew are dead. The survivors have to endure travelling home by sea past the wreckage of their ferry. The official inquiry into the Herald disaster declares that from top to bottom the body corporate of Townsend Torreson, now owned by P&O, was infected with the disease of sloppiness. But the Department of Transport, whose job it is to make sure ferries are safe, escapes criticism.
There were two lots of people who were implicated in that. One was the company itself, and the second group, who I think arguably bear the major responsibility, were the Department of Transport, because it was the Marine Inspectorate that had the job, still does, of certifying that a ship is safe for sea, a new ship, when it's first built and before it goes to sea. And they were the inspecting authority, and they were the people who had the final say on whether they would issue a certificate that the ship was safe to go to sea. And they also never saw that there was no warning light on the bridge.
The prosecuting authorities don't share Peter Ford's verdict, and 3 years later, P&O becomes only the second company in British legal history to be charged with corporate manslaughter. 7 men, including assistant boatswain Mark Stanley, who admitted failing to close the bow doors, Herald Master Captain David Lurie, and 3 company directors, are charged.
It's quite a deplorable decision. Despite an inquest saying an unlawful killing had taken place, despite people dying because the ship went to sea with the bow doors open, and the management having the highest level of sloppiness according to the inquiry, apparently we can't prosecute them.
In opposition, the Labour Party pledges to introduce a law of corporate manslaughter. In government, and 20 years later, it still hasn't.
It's a case of that the company should be made to understand that it cannot and should not and cannot and must not harm people. And I think that's where corporate responsibility should be part of the law of this land.
Bridge indicator lights, CCTV cameras or both are now fitted as standard. However, there remains a fundamental flaw in the design of roll-on, roll-off ferries. If water floods their vast open vehicle decks, they remain vulnerable to sinking.